Hi, this is Patty Hodge at Dr. Nurses Rock. And today I have a very special guest. Um, this is a face that you may recognize from YouTube if you're interested in home organization or decluttering. This is Dana K. White. And Dana is the creator of the No Mess Decluttering Method. And much to her own surprise, apparently, a decluttering expert. Dana shares realistic home management strategies and a message of hope for the hopelessly messy in her books, Organizing for the Rest of Us, Decluttering at the Speed of Life, and How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. Dana teaches her strategies through her blog, podcast, and videos at aslobcomesclean.com and trains coaches in her unique decluttering process at declutteringcoaches.com. Welcome to you, Dana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm so grateful to you that you agreed to come to this little channel. Um, I would like you to know that a lot of the people that I know that are in this community here have had some struggles with clutter. And sometimes it's a mental health issue. Sometimes it's grief. We just came off this whole series on grief here on
Mhm.
this channel. And sometimes it's just because we're born that way. Yeah. And we have
And
to learn,
sometimes it's all three.
yes, and
Yeah.
how to overcome that in some way. And I
Mhm.
just, one of the things that comes to me is this calling yourself a slob. And wow, I mean, that's kind of harsh.
It is harsh. I always say, I am not calling anyone else a slob. I am not encouraging you to use that word about yourself because it is a unkind word.
Yeah.
And I um I had often, before I started doing what I do, I had often said the words, it's not like I'm a slob. I'm not a slob. And and yet, I don't know how much you know of my story of how I started. Do you know?
I
Okay,
would
so
love to hear it.
yeah, I wanted to be a writer. Did not want to write about this. This was never something I was going to write about. But I wanted to be a writer. I'm a creative type person. I was a theater arts teacher before I had kids. Stayed home, thought writing would be a creative outlet that I could turn into a career at some point. But I didn't know how to do that. Then I discovered blogs back in 2008 when they were pretty new. And I thought, that's it. I've got to have one. But I didn't start because my house was a disaster. And so I was trying and trying to get my house under control, still could not do it. And then I was actually sitting in church one morning, like the day before my second kid went to kindergarten. And I was like, okay, this is the day. I'm only going to have one kid at home. I should be able to start a blog. Why have I not been able to figure this out? And in that moment, the idea came to me to start writing about that. I thought, well, that's actually a really good idea. So I was like, I'm going to use this as a way to practice blogging, not as a way, I didn't think this would be the thing I would write about long term, but I thought this would be a way for me to learn while also keeping myself focused on my house. Then I'll get my house perfect in a couple months and then I'll write about something else, right? And in that moment, the name of my blog, A Slob Comes Clean, came to me. And I was really like, I tried to think of a different word because I was like, I don't want to use that word. That's horrible. I'm not a slob. But I'm so thankful now, looking back, that I used that word because by using the worst word that I could use, I set myself on a path of total honesty. So I stopped sugarcoating. I stopped reframing to be like, well, yes, yes, I do this thing, or this is the way it is in my house, but here's the reason, or here's the whatever. I just kind of was completely honest, right? The other thing that happened was as people started reading, nobody I knew, because I didn't tell anybody I knew that I was doing this. I used a fake name. This is my deep dark secret. Like this is the thing I was always trying to hide from everybody, right? I didn't want anybody to know. But as people started to read and say, I was shocked that people were saying, this is how my brain works. These are the things, the thoughts that run through my mind about my house as well. Your struggles are my struggles. I saw that there was a common thread among the people who related to what I was saying about my home and my struggles, that they were all highly intelligent, highly creative women. And I realized, oh, there is a direct relationship between the creative side of me, which I'm thankful for. I love that, right? That's what makes me me.
Sure.
The creative side of me and the fact that I struggle in my home. Not that all creative people are messy, but most messy people are highly creative. And so I when I realized that relationship, it actually gave me a a peace that I hadn't had before, because I was able to see that this is how my brain works. My brain works differently from the brain of naturally organized people. And so all of those years when I had been trying to read everything and watch everything I could do to try to change, I was reading advice written by people who were naturally organized. And because that's who usually writes about this stuff, right? They
Right.
enjoy it. And so they write about it. And so I was reading that and I was lost. I was like, are we speaking the same language? Because I feel like I'm doing what you're telling me to do. And it is not working that way. And so realizing that, calling myself a slob was this, it just gave me this understanding ultimately down the line that this is how my brain works. My brain works differently from the brains of naturally organized people, and that is okay. And it is better to accept that this is how my brain works and work with it, like use the way my brain works, than it is to try to keep trying to follow the advice of people whose brains work very differently. And so I don't have to feel like a failure because traditional organizing advice doesn't work for me. I just have to figure out what does work for me.
Yeah.
And so that self acceptance gave me the freedom to actually change in a way that I had never been able to change when I was trying to be like someone else. Anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know.
Well, it's exactly what I wanted to know. I think
Yeah.
that's great because people need to accept themselves the way they
Mhm.
are and accept the conditions that they're in and be truthful about what's going
Yeah.
on.
And
And
accepting myself doesn't mean accepting, because that was the struggle I had. I was like, why would I want to accept myself? Because I don't want to live like this. I did not want my house to be like that. But accepting how my brain works is the thing that let me finally change my home. Yeah.
I get that. And I think that the things that you offer to people are so clear. And my mind and your mind don't work alike.
Mhm.
I'm not naturally neat, but I don't really lend towards cluttering
Mhm.
because I have a tolerance, and you write about this in your books, your clutter tolerance, where I need to look at something and I like to see a clear counter, or I liked but my kitchen table, I'm not going to show you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because there's just a way that we live. And and when we're uncomfortable with the way that we're living, then something has to change. And you
Right.
found a
Well,
way
and
to,
yeah, and actually I call it your clutter threshold, because here's the thing was I never liked my countertops being piled with stuff. Like I hated that. But also I couldn't figure out how to keep them from getting that way.
yeah, yeah,
And so the threshold is actually the point at which I only have what I can easily keep under control. So the fact was I had more stuff than I could handle. And so if I was going to keep the amount of stuff that I had under control, it was going to require constant shifting and maintenance and moving and dealing and all this stuff. And that's the part that just escapes me and I can't do. So the answer was for me to just not have the stuff, for me to have so much less stuff so that there's not as many things to end up in a pile so that the pile doesn't happen. I don't know.
Well, and the world works against us basically because everybody's selling us something, and we always think we
Always.
need to have something, and sometimes we have six of this, and we don't need six of that for whatever reason that these things happen. And so when I watch how you declutter, because I do watch your channel, and I have one of your books, not all of them. I did get this one, which is
Hmm.
Organizing for the Rest of Us, which I'll take a little break here and say I love this book.
I'm so
Um,
glad.
I love that I love the way the compact way it is. I love the pictures in it. And it's giftable. And I thought, well, this is great for someone who's just starting out with a household because thankfully I do probably 98 of the 99 things that you have in here already. So, but your advice is practical and it's doable. And obviously, some people will not be able to follow it exactly and they'll adapt it to their own way of
Mhm.
being. But some of the things that I think people should understand is that when they declutter according to your method, they're not making a mess. And that's the whole point is if I wanted to clean out my pantry, other people would tell me, well, empty out the pantry and put all the stuff out and go through. And then I would be exhausted.
Mhm.
And I would look and say, well, I can't finish this. And then the next day I'd be overwhelmed, or that day even overwhelmed and wouldn't want to start again. So I love that you paid attention to your brain
Mhm.
and that it became the way that you were true to yourself and becoming this writer that you wanted to be. So
Mhm.
that's amazing. And I want people to feel like that can happen for them too. If they're struggling not only with clutter, but just with where am I in life or
Yes.
what's my purpose? What's my point of being here? So you're very generous by telling this story, and I hope that people are taking it to heart, that they understand that there is hope for all kinds of things in their life, and their environment reflects something about them. And a, a peaceful environment lends itself to a peaceful interior in some way, right? We're not dealing so much.
Yes, I always want to be clear on that though, because I think a lot of times the naturally organized person is part of the reason why they're naturally organized is that they have to they have to sort things neatly to be able to focus,
Yeah.
right? Like they have to set things up in a way as a way to help them focus. The problem for a lot of us who struggle with clutter is that we are able to focus in the midst of the mess. And so until all of the sudden we can't, right? And so it's not that we never get to that point. It's that I can zero in on something and I don't notice the mess building, right? And I think that's where sometimes the disconnect comes in. Is sometimes people will say, well, you've got to be able to clean this up so that you can be successful, so that you can get the things done that you want to get done. And sometimes people like me are like, well, I'm getting the things done. So I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah,
I just let this stuff go so that I can get the stuff done, right? And
right.
so it's a superpower until all of a sudden it's my kryptonite too, So, um, yeah, which I always like to make sure I point that out, just because that was one of the things that sometimes I would be like, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, oh, that's why I didn't understand, what we were talking about. But you're right. It definitely feels better
Yeah.
to have a space that is under control, but it ends up getting that way because I'm not noticing it happening.
Well, I don't live alone in a house, right? And most of us don't. We mostly have to
Right.
live with people who may have different capacity
Yeah.
for decluttering or for recognizing clutter or knowing what to do about things. But there usually is one of us in charge of that, right?
Yeah.
And usually it falls on in this household, right? To pick up the shoes. When I first got here, um, obviously the conditions were not optimal. We were grieving and we were in a state
Absolutely.
of, a lot of dismay at the time. And there were three boys, my son and his two boys, but there were 17 pairs of shoes laying around
Mhm.
most of the time. And, they were taught to put dishes in the sink, which is great, but there's a dishwasher, like not even a
Mhm.
step away. And so there were things that I was also overwhelmed with, sadness and all of the other things that happen in that kind of a situation in a new home where was not familiar with things. And so, I was trying all kinds of ways to contain this, whatever this was, because it wasn't my stuff. And these are boys growing up and had a certain way of doing things. And I, tried baskets. We'll throw the shoes in the baskets and we'll do what we can do. And I was struggling. I was struggling,
Mhm.
because I didn't feel like I should be in charge of their things. And so now they each have rooms and things would make them their way back up to their rooms. And um, over time, we all started to think a little more clearly and we all started to identify that we wanted to live in a home that was
Mhm.
presentable. And uh, and so we still struggle with a couple of things. The dishes never seem to end.
Yeah, they don't.
And the laundry, I will fold some laundry, but it must make its way back to wherever it's supposed to go on its own. Uh, and so what I'm saying here is that it did not happen overnight. And my discomfort was not at the same level as everyone else's discomfort with things around them. And I had to honor the fact that I was not in charge of throwing away things that didn't belong to me. So some of
Well,
this,
that's such a unique situation that you went into as
yeah,
well, where you're navigating, coming in and sensitivity and, being a soft place for them while also, yes, we want to get this. But I always tell people that if you're watching this video right now, you're the one who cares the most. And you can't there's no way to make the other people do that, other than to start the process yourself. And then they're going to see it and experience, oh, it is easier to live in a space with less stuff.
yeah, well, we're not tripping over things basically, and
Right,
and
right.
we're happier to be able to sit in a room that's calmer in some way.
Yeah.
So I would like people to be able to find you, obviously. So I'll be
Mhm.
putting all of your information in the description, how to find all your places where you are, and how to find your books. And if anyone has some comments or questions and want to respond to this video, is it okay if I get back to you and say, oh, so and so needs this info? Maybe you'll be part of our community here in some way. Um,
Yeah, sure. And I have a new-ish page that is a slob comes clean. That's the name of my website, that we talked about before, .com/FAQ.
okay.
And it's really like I'm very thankful for that page because it's very robust in a lot of the questions that feel like I am the only one dealing with this. I think you'd be surprised how many times others have asked very similar questions. And so what we do in there is we give the links to different places where I've talked about it, including, I do Q&As on Tuesdays, live Q&As, and we have direct links. On most of the questions, we have direct links to four, sometimes more. There's usually a lot more that we could choose from, but direct links to like this is where Dana answered a question very similar to what you're asking. And I think I always just want people to know there really is hope. You really are not alone. You are not the only one who has dealt with this, and there is a way forward. And so I always want to make sure people know that it's never hopeless in your home, no matter how hopeless it feels.
That's a wonderful message. One of the things that I would like to mention before we go away
Mhm.
is that there is a thing called hoarding disorder, and
Mhm.
we've seen
Yeah.
these channels where these very extreme situations
Mhm.
are happening. And if there is anyone struggling with that kind of condition, that's not what we're talking about here. That is a psychiatric condition, and
Mhm.
there is specific help for that. And if I find something, I'll put it in the link also for people that may be struggling with that particular issue. However, often that happens because of a grief situation that
Mhm.
triggers it. And so the message here after coming off all of those videos recently is that if you know someone who is grieving and you know someone who has already struggled with clutter in their home, do the intervention early.
Mm.
Like step in early and say, can I help?
Yes.
And check in early and make sure that person is safe and okay in their environment. We didn't go there today, except at the very end here, which I want to put that out there because of where we just came from. But this decluttering method that Dana has developed, I love it. And I love the questions. There's only two questions that she asks when she's going through this process. We're not making a bigger mess. We're asking
Not using emotions.
not at all. And I have adopted your question when someone brings something new into the house and I pick it up, instead of saying, "Where do you want me to put this?" I say, "Where is the first place you would look for this?"
Yeah.
And that is Dana's question. And that has changed life considerably for us.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate you and I'm so
Thank you.
grateful to you. And I do hope you'll come back.
Oh, I'd
And
love to. I would love
thank
to. And I do want to say about the hoarding disorder.
yes.
I a lot of my coaches, so I train coaches to lead people through my method. And many of them have worked with people who have been diagnosed. And as they say, like working with one of them at the same time as they're getting the therapy that they need, the mental health help that they need, is really powerful. And the thing that I always want to say is if you're watching this video right now, like if you click, I'm assuming that you're going to put something about decluttering in the title.
Yeah, probably.
If you're watching this video and you have been diagnosed or you think maybe I need to look into being diagnosed, you're overwhelmed. What I would say is, and this comes from talking with my own therapist over time, right? Is she really emphasized to focus on, okay, there are things you cannot do, but is there anything you can do? And if there's anything that we said today or that you learned from watching my videos or the book or whatever, if you can read the book, that is a huge step.
It
If
is.
you can if you can start with the trash in one area or if you can pick up one item, like Patricia said and ask where would I look for this first? I mean, like if there's one thing you can do, it often then will get things moving that might be the thing that helps you get the therapy help that you need or anyway, so that as a non-mental health professional I'm always careful to not give mental health advice,
Yes.
but that is I see that in a lot of people and I hear from a lot of people who tell me that they were able to make progress when they didn't think so. Like I always tell people, don't start with the sentimental stuff. If we're talking about grief, don't start with the things that are difficult. Leave that for later. Don't even worry about that now. Is there anything that isn't sentimental? Is there anything that isn't difficult? Go ahead and do that because what I found for myself is I would get so overwhelmed by the things that were huge and heavy that I would just not do anything. And in reality, there was so much I could do that wasn't huge and heavy.
That's a wonderful message. Yeah. Just start somewhere
Yeah.
is what I tell people. Just start somewhere with anything in life.
Mhm.
And the decluttering piece is something big. And so we just start somewhere and do what you can. And that in itself is miracle making,
Yeah.
actually.
It really is.
So I have to introduce you to my cat because he's trying to make an appearance here. And
I saw him on the chair earlier. Yeah.
and
Oh,
she likes to get into the picture. So Dana, I am grateful to you. And
thank you.
I do think that you've helped so many people and I'm such an admirer of yours. And I think you're a hero. So thank you for being here today. And we'll say bye for now, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see you again.
Sounds great.